This is just a test of my Othello game. We have AI and we can set their difficulty, and if I were to set this difficulty to 0, that would be our players. So if I were set to both of these to 0, I'd be playing for both sides. Not in the way you might interpret that as. Anyways, so I can move and I can place a piece and pieces get flipped and it's all good. Everything works out fine. I'm actually not very good at Othello, like at all. I'm not good at thinking that it's not something I'm good at. But you can see the pieces are getting flipped and stuff, and we can give them AI. So if I were to give player 2 a difficulty of say 2, I could play against it and it would make a move eventually when it runs its algorithm. There it is. And I could keep going like that and just play against it. 2 is actually incredibly short-sighted. It's not good. It really is just not great. It still tries to win, but it's not very good at winning, is what I'm saying. It's not like it gives up. And we would keep going until eventually somebody wins. I'm pretty sure 2 is actually better than me though. It really is not. I'm horrible at Othello. I really am, as you might be able to tell. And we could give both players a AI. So if I give player 1 a difficulty of 4, it's gonna completely dominate player 2. And to watch that, I would rather just play this on a separate thing because I want to talk about the graph as well. You'll notice that it sort of freezes up here. That's because it runs the algorithm, and Blueprints does not like very long recursive algorithms. It's not. Oh boy. Alright. Anyways, all we're doing here at the very beginning of the game is we're checking to see if player 1 has a difficulty greater than 0. And if it does, then we know it's a AI move. So then it does a delay of 0.2 seconds. That's just for that freeze earlier. If we didn't have that 0.2, the freeze would have been, it would have looked even worse than it did at the very beginning. I should probably increase that delay to something like 1 or just 2 or something. But after that, we run the min-max algorithm. As soon as the game is done freezing up, I will show you that. There we go. And we just pass in our current graph and our player's 1's difficulty. That's going to be its depth. I can't pronounce that properly. So basically, the higher its difficulty, the farther into the game it looks ahead. And then we delay for 0.3 seconds because 3 seconds, because if it weren't for that delay, the game would actually freeze up and the pieces would just appear as they were flipped, and whatever. You wouldn't see the flip and the placing of the piece actually happening because it takes so long for the min-max algorithm to run. It's not great. But then it plays the move, and when we play the move, we check to see if any pieces are flipping. And if they are not, then we're going to check if it is a possible move, if that move is legal. And if it is, then we play that piece. We tell that piece it's a separate blueprint to play based on if it is player's 1's turn or not. When it is done falling, the pieces are done falling. Here we go. We get our affected chords, so any pieces that would get flipped basically when you play in that move. And then for each of them we tell them to flip. Right there. And we add it to our flipping pieces, and we also have to simulate our move in passing in our graph. And what that does is, well, the reason we're simulating our graph instead of just setting our elements inside of our graph is because we need to simulate moves for our AI. It has to look ahead like X number of turns, and the graph is going to be constantly changing. We don't want to affect our actual graph for the AI to find out what it needs to do. So instead we have to simulate our graph, and then we tell our graph to be what the simulation came out as. Then we get our possible moves, and this is interesting. We get our possible moves for whoever's turn is next, would normally be next. But if they don't have any possible moves, because it is possible for that to happen in Othello, you might have seen it earlier over here, when there was a bunch of black over here and there was a 9 square of white over here. And white had no possible moves, even though black just moved, so it was black's turn once again. So we have to check for that after we set our graph. And based on that, we'll set whoever's turn it is. And if nobody has a turn, then it's game over, and it tells us whoever won. It's going to give us our score and whoever won. Yeah, this takes forever in Blueprints. If I was doing this in C++, this would be so much faster. Anyways, when the pieces finish falling, we check to see if they've all finished falling, and then we check to see if it is an AI's turn or not. And if it is an AI's turn, we're going to delay for a little bit, and then we're going to run the algorithm again to find out what our best move is, and we tell them to play that move. Right there. Let's see, our simulate move, like I said earlier, we just make a copy of our graph, because we don't want to actually affect it. We find out what gets flipped. For each of them, we tell them to set it to the proper enum. Our enums, by the way, are none, player 1 and player 2, because those are the 3 states our pieces can be in. And then we tell our actual moves piece to set itself, because that's not included in our affected chords. If we were to look at our affected chords function, there it is. All we're doing is going through every direction, up, down, left, right, diagonal up, diagonal down, diagonal, whatever, you get the point. And then we're going to keep on going in that direction until we find either a note that is the opposite, until we find a empty space, meaning that nothing from our node to that space is going to get flipped, or until we find a space that has our own tile in it, our own piece in it, meaning everything in between our chord, everything between our move and that tile it found does get flipped, and we add it to our chords. Let's see. So for our possible moves, all we're going to do is loop through every single piece on the board and get its affected chords. And if it does have an affected chord, then we will say it's a possible move, because it would affect a piece, and you can't place a piece in Othello that wouldn't flip another piece. Our chord heuristic. This is where we say what is the value of every piece. So there we go. We see black just won by completely dominating white, because it looked 2 turns ahead of white does. 2 turns farther than white does. Right now, white's difficulty is 2, and black's difficulty is 4. So it's 2 turns ahead. It does great. If I were to set this to 3 and 3. It would actually be a much more even game. Let's hit play and just let you watch that while I explain things for no reason, because this is not a proper tutorial. But anyways, you also noticed that, or you might have noticed, that the pieces really liked going into corners and the edges, because in a proper Othello game, that's a good thing, being on the edge or a border, because if you're on the edge, you can only get flipped from the sides. You can't get flipped from above you, because let's say black was here and white goes here, black will never get flipped from white going over here, because it needs a white over here as well to flip the black. So there's less chances of black getting flipped if you're on the edge. And if you're on the corner, you can't get flipped at all, because white can't be here, and it can't be here or and here, because this is outside of the board. So it really likes going on the edges and the corners, and this is where we tell it that. All we do is we get our chord, we get if it's on an edge or not, and if it is not on an edge, it gets a heuristic of 1, meaning it's worth 1 point. So anything inside the center is worth 1 point, and anything that is on the edge is worth 3 points. But anything that's on a corner is worth 7 points, because if you're on a corner, that's huge. That's a great advantage for you, or well, it could be. There are only 4 corners, of course, so there's less chance of that actually happening. But it's set up so it automatically tries to go for the corner. It knows that going into corner is good, basically. Let's see. There's a bunch of functions here that are just like chord plus chord or chord times int. That's just a save space, whatever. Get player pieces count. All we're literally doing here is going through every single one of the tiles and saying, alright, well, if you're black, then you're player 1, if you're white, then you're player 2, and just add it to its count. That's literally all it is. That's where we get our final score on whoever won. It's not based on whatever heuristic we set, it's based on the number of pieces on the board, but the heuristic, of course, tells them what to prioritize, not... we don't want to just prioritize the final number of pieces on the board, because the AI can't look that far ahead, at least not in blueprints, because well, in blueprints at least, it just tells the loop to stop, and it stops the game running, and that's not great when you try to look too far ahead. If I were to set this AI to difficulty 4 and 4, for example, in the middle of the game, it would just stop. Because it would go through too many loops, and blueprints is like, nope, I don't like that. And I'm like, but it's good, I'm okay, it's fine. Anyways. If we were doing this in C++, it would be fine. We could multi-thread it, and it wouldn't cause this freezing issue. And I was thinking, you know, for a tutorial, I could do it in C++, but honestly, if you understood C++, you probably wouldn't be watching my videos. And if you don't understand C++, I don't want to teach C++ to you, because I don't understand it myself. I mean, I understand it, but I don't actually, like, I don't know enough to properly... that I would feel proud enough to call myself a C++ programmer. Basically anything you could do in C#, I can do in C++, but anything more specific than that, I can't really do. It's, yeah. Anyways. The difficulty right now is 3 and 3, by the way, for the black and white. They're both set to difficulty 3, and so you see it's a pretty close game. They're playing... smarter than I would, at least. Let's see. Get affected chords, we already did that. Create board is something else. Simulate move, we already showed that. Chord is in range, pretty simple. Chord to index is just the faking a 2D array with a 1D array thing. So in our min-max function, this is the actual AI, it's the recursive function that gets called. It's nothing groundbreaking, everybody... well, most people know what, or most programmers know what the min-max function is, or some people call it minimax. I think minimax just sounds better, it sounds cool, minimax. But, so we start out by getting our possible moves and seeing if we have a possible move, and if we don't, then we break out of it, or if the depth is equal to 0, then we break out, because we're going from a positive number to a negative number to eventually reach 0, and if we break out, then we get our heuristic for our graph, and we just return the move plus the heuristic. The move is -1, -1, because we don't care about this move. The only move we actually care about is over here at this best move. When we go through our children, we go through every single move, and then we say we simulate their graph, and this is for something else. I'll get into that. But if it's a better move than what we've gone through previously, then we set it to be our best move, and we eventually return our best move. Obviously, the only one that really cares about this is when it's at when it's at 4 or whatever you set as your input for your depth. But you know, it has to return a move, otherwise we don't know what to do with it. We just have a heuristic, which doesn't really help us make a move. Over here, we actually have to ask if, after making this move, okay, so in a min-max function, or min-max, oh, the game is over. Let's see who won. Player 1 won with a score of 33 to 31, so player 1 wins. Bravo, good job, player 1. We could tell it to say, do difficulty 4 against a difficulty 1. Let's just completely go ham on this. White is going to get destroyed. Horribly. This is not going to be a very long game, but anyways, it's possible in Othello for you to make a move and then it still is your turn, because there is no available move for white, because like I said, you have to flip a piece in order to make a move in Othello. So if you can't flip a piece, then you can't make a move. So we have to account for that over here when we ask if the next player has a possible move in the simulated graph. And if they don't, then we say, alright, well, we're still going to do the min-max, except we're saying it's still our turn. We're still maximizing instead of minimizing. We're not flipping around. So that's one of the strange things I had to account for, but it wasn't exactly hard to do. It was just, a strange thing I had to account for. Before I did this, the AI acted kind of weird sometimes, and I was like, why is that happening? And then I realized it's because we're not accounting for that. See right there, white can't make a move, so now it's black's turn. And there we go. And now it's still black's turn, because white can't make a move now. So he's going to go over here, and the AI was accounting for that in the minimax function. That's it to really talk about this. Oh yeah, I didn't really talk about why I did this at all, did I? For our visual novel tutorial, I was like, does anybody care about minigame at all? Any thoughts at all? And nobody appeared to have any thoughts whatsoever. As far as minigames went, I was considering 4 in a row, but it turns out that it's not a very old game. It's actually a relatively new game, and I don't want to potentially infringe on any copyrights or anything like that. So I was like, alright, well, I still made it. It was really easy to make. In fact, it was easier than this, because in 4 in a row, you only have 7 possible moves, or whatever, width fee set. And it's always going to be that or less. So the AI runs a lot faster, and, well, it was just really easy. All you do is say, because there's also no Y either. You can't, in Othello, there's your X move, there's your Y coordinate and your X coordinate, but in 4 in a row, you just drop it down. So you only have 7 moves, and you can't force the Y to be anywhere in particular. There's always going to be one Y. But, like I said, I was like, well, I'm not sure if I'm actually allowed to make a tutorial for that. So I was like, well, let's just leave that alone. The thing about Tetris too, Tetris is really easy to make actually, but I'm, again, not sure if you're legally allowed to. I've seen people make tutorials for Tetris, but I'd rather not potentially risk anything. What else was there? Checkers. I just don't like checkers. I'll be completely honest. I think it's a boring game. I don't think it's very challenging and fun or engaging at all. So I was like, screw checkers. Definitely not doing Go, because this AI is taking long enough in blueprints as it is. Go is definitely not going to work. Also, we're not doing any lookup tables or anything like that, because I kinda can't be bothered. So that's something to keep in mind. Then I was considering chess. Lots of people seem to want to know how to make chess in Unreal for whatever reason, but the problem with chess is that you have to program every single possible move, and I don't want to... Oh, how shall I say this? I don't understand a lot of chess moves. Like, I didn't even know that a pawn could move diagonal capture something if the thing was like next to the pawn instead of diagonal from it. I'm like, that's so weird. Why would you? It doesn't. Whatever. I don't care. I don't care about chess. There's also the whole castle switching for king thing. I don't know what's going on with that, and basically I don't want to program those moves. I don't want to program the special moves, basically. What else was there? Mahjong, I don't know how to score things. I just try to win as fast as possible whenever I'm playing Mahjong. And yeah, I'm kind of running out of things to talk about when it comes to our actual test for Othello. But if I was going to make a board game or a mini game, I would probably choose Othello. There's also, tic-tac-toe is a possibility that would use AI, but come on. It's not, no, it's not. I care about tic-tac-toe less than I care about checkers. And there we go, player 1 wins. And white actually had some pieces on the board this time, unlike when the difficulty was set to 2, because it apparently just made worse choices, which led to a better outcome for it. I mean, it still got dominated, and it didn't win, but yeah, that's I I don't have much else to say about this. Anyways, sorry if you were expecting a tutorial in this video. I just wanted to sort of have a, I just sort of wanted to make a video about this because in case I don't actually make a tutorial, because, ugh. But yeah, I hope you don't feel like I wasted your time.